Straight from the base, deep down, no precision. High crime treason, we broadcast in sedition. Like the Wall Street morning afternoon edition. Commandeering airwaves from unknown positions. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded. With information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded. With information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. Ha ha.
Michael Marie.
Welcome. My name is Riley Moorman. You're listening to Student Revolutions in History on CIUT 89.5 FM. Today, we have a very special guest, and we will also be talking about a special topic, something we haven't talked very much about, but something that is incredibly important to everyone and students specifically, because unfortunately students don't have a lot of space. We'll be talking about spaces this episode. We'll be talking about third spaces, also known as third places. Specifically, this is a concept we'll be diving into a little bit more, but in basics, it's a place that's neither your work nor your home. It's something that all of us have, even if we don't recognize it. Maybe your favorite cafe, maybe a pub, doesn't matter. But all of us have this one thing, except for students most of the time, because people with developing brains shouldn't have nice things, is unfortunately a lot of the motto that the university administration works on in North America. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that just after the break.
Don't take no prisoners if you can't afford to feed none. Don't start no fights if you cannot predict the outcome. Don't make donations where you cannot get your dough back. The apathetic bullshit, send them all your Prozac. I will not climb into your telephone tree, and hell no, you cannot put me on hold. It's the same reported message you've been singing all along. Keep handing us the Bible while you walking off with all the gold. The bureaucratic office sends you merry-go-rounding, while the KKK police the streets by bloodhounding. Interest on the credit card just keeps on compounding, but the FCC can never shut this pirate sound down. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded, with information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded, with information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded, with information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded, with information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported.
Une fois que t'as senti le vent, tu t'allonges sur ton dos.
Yeah.
Tu es le tu tournes que vibrer, tu t'enfonces dedans.
With information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded, with information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded, with information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. Live and direct, we come and never pre-recorded, with information that would never be reported. Disregard the mainstream, media distorted. We come and listen and supported. 6'6" above sea level. I grab the mic because I like to take it to another mental level. 6'6" above sea level. I grab the mic because I like to take it to another mental level. 6'6" above sea level. I grab the mic because I like to take it to another mental level. 6'6" above sea level.
We're back. This is Student Revolutions in History on CIUT 89.5 FM. My name is Riley Moorman, and for this first little bit, we'll be talking about third places as a concept. I have a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Alsazer. I am a third-year student here at U of T. I'm also a part of various student orgs, specifically at Victoria College, but also U of T-wide.
Yeah, Michael wrote a very, very good piece in the Strand newspaper about third places, specifically within Victoria College, but it did a really good job in touching on third places as a whole. And I know specifically that we work together in some of the third places that are still available for students within universities. What's the importance of third places just to people as a whole and specifically university students?
As a whole, it's kind of just really important. It's a place for congregation and for like humans to meet and get to know each other and to form friendships and bonds, or just to exist beyond the responsibility to be productive or the responsibility to like take care of yourself. It's great just having those places. Specifically for university students, that's where a lot of student life happens. And that's where a lot of the memories that you kind of take with you, or the things that you get advertised to on like the brochures for various institutions. It's not the classroom. It's not your second job. It's not your dorm. It's not being at home. It's when you're in the Cat's Eye, which is where we know each other, which is a great fun student lounge on Victoria College, or it's at Caffeines, which is a student-run cafe on Victoria College, or it's on the field, which is now open.
Which luckily they turned into a parking lot so that everyone can enjoy that third place, because as we all know, everyone in the universe has a car and drives that car to university, and there's no problems paying for any car payments or insurance as a student.
Yes, students are famous for having the money to buy cars. But, you know, at least it's open and we can now sit on the grass. I loved when the Boundary released an article, it was like U of T students touch grass, which is needed because otherwise U of T specifically amongst like universities in Canada, and I would say like at least North America or worldwide, is renowned for just being a very hustle culture where you're expected to be studying all the time. You see Robarts filled to the brim all the time and like overnight in the Commons. It's kind of ridiculous. Students shouldn't be kind of pushing themselves this hard. I have friends who just pull like multiple all-nighters back to back, especially right in like final season, which is by no means healthy or sustainable, but that's kind of what's incentivized. And so third place are really important as like a space to exist beyond that and to beyond just like sleep and work. Which is where most of life happens, I would say. My fondest memories have all happened there. I talk about my article briefly, just like tracing back the history of third places in my life, from like in elementary school, playing on the playground, where those were the opportunities to develop your imagination and your thoughts and build friendships and social skills that you use throughout your entire life, but also not needing to like develop things there and just to like exist and to sit and to touch grass because that's needed sometimes. In high school, it was like my high school drama room where we played music and we had fun vibes and played with the lights and had like a little stage. But that's where like you form your friendships. I had friends host me a surprise birthday party there one time. That's where your memories are. But yeah, there's really important topics.
Yeah, and I think it is very specifically important in a lot of context. U of T is famous for being in downtown Toronto, which is great for access to the rest of the city and is absolutely terrible for student life because it means that most of the people go to campus and then immediately leave after. And there doesn't get a lot of chances to be student life. Specifically, we started during the COVID pandemic, which eliminated a lot of the third spaces in our life. And I think a lot of people, even if they can't put the words to it, will know exactly what I'm talking about, of just that little difference between working, going home, and just going to a cafe you like or hanging out in a park by yourself. There's so many chances to meet people, and I think third spaces specifically, not in a university context, but third places are a great and very important place to meet people outside of your social circle. Because if you're a university student and you only meet people at university, you're only going to meet other university students. CIUT is one of my favorite third places on campus. It's fantastic. I've had the chance to meet tons and tons of people I would never have run into in either my work or my home life. My home life, because obviously it's at home, and my work life being at school is very limited in the amount of people you run into, both age-wise, experience-wise, interest-wise. And I think as people, it's really important to diversify who you talk to, just get as many perspectives as possible, actually engage with people and not as angry comments on the internet, because unfortunately a lot of our exposure to other people and other people's cultures is solely through the internet, and it sucks. It is terrible for your mental health, and I think it's pretty universally agreed upon that it's terrible for society as a whole.
Oh yeah.
But it is really, really important to meet people outside of your specific stage of life and just to see what's going on, get a bit of a bigger perspective for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, even within the organizing context or the political context, that's where people come together, and that's when they realize common issues, common solutions, common means of grouping together. It's through those like shared spaces where you aren't expected to do a certain task, that you just kind of drift and those things naturally come up, versus like it's kind of the issue I see when like you see a lot of surveys being used to try to get like information from students about like, this is when you're putting out surveys to try to find out what students want, versus when you're just like sitting in one of these places where students are just talking about the issues they're dealing with, and you get that naturally coming out of conversation, where you'll just naturally find a lot of students talking about the issue of exams being released way too late, the dates for those, and especially how that affects international students, or the issues of fees and trying to get immigration issues. It's very extensive, and that comes up naturally through conversation and through people just chatting, going, oh, you have that issue too? Oh, I had this issue. Here's a solution I found. What if we like went at it together? That's only comes out of those shared places where there isn't that predestinated like expectation.
Yeah, and I think specifically for students, and this is something we'll be talking about in a little bit, a lot more, but specifically for students who live in a very hierarchical structure their entire life, which I'm not saying this in like a neo-Marxist kind of society kind of way, but just your teachers grade you. Your ability to get an education is determined by people at a higher station than you, and everyone else is at the same station as you. But if you can enter a place where there isn't this kind of fake concept of he's a prof, I'm a student, he is inherently worth more than me, and you just go to a place where everyone is worth the same because we're all humans with different lived experiences, I think that's really, really valuable. And unfortunately, we have seen concerted effort, not as some great grand conspiracy, but as a series of actions and policies that have made the impact that we've seen a disappearance of third spaces in the entire world. Well, I shouldn't say the entire world, in North America specifically, because the entire rest of the world's doing amazing at it. But in North America, and specifically on university campuses, we've seen a almost segregation of student life. We've seen the faculty separated from the students. We've seen the faculty and students separated from the administrators, and we've seen all of these people pushed into different spaces. And I think that's really unfortunate because some of the best research, some of the best friendships, some of the best mentors come from places in which you don't necessarily have those existing hierarchical structures. You don't have to write paperwork to discuss an idea with a professor. You don't have to fill out a form to say, oh, this is a really good space to do this specific thing. We'll be getting to this a little bit more because I'm very mad about it, but having a recording studio on campus, oh, that's a great idea. And once you shove it into the hierarchical structures of a university, it lies dead on its back. But it's just so important to have spaces where people can feel like people and not exist as employees or as moms or as kids, and they can just exist by themselves. We'll be talking a lot more about the differences in university spaces, specifically in third places as a whole. But if you've enjoyed what we're talking about, you can find all of the episodes of Student Revolutions in History on the CIUT website. They are also released on Spotify and every other streaming platform. It's just called Student Revolutions. You can find it there. We record every episode and they are published weekly. But if you want to hear them as soon as they come out, we're every 9 to 10 a.m. on Monday mornings. And everyone listening, I want to thank you so very much. But we'll be talking about university third places specifically as a concept, because the vast majority of people listening have been to university at some point because Canada has some of the highest education rates in the entire world, but also because we are a community radio station run out of a university. So no matter who you are, it is applicable to you because the fact that you're listening to this is proof of third places in university having value.
We are recording this in a university third place as we speak.
Exactly, which unfortunately, a lot of people would be kind of upset that it exists because we force this idea of productivity on universities. And this is something that's happened quite quickly over the last 50 years. Universities for the last 1,000 years have long been this kind of place of learning, of teaching, and they haven't had this monetary value put on them. But unfortunately, since around the 1960s and 70s, and we've talked about this a lot, but that's when a lot of student revolutions really kicked off. 1968 was the year of the student. And since then, we've seen a concerted effort by people in power in universities to defund, to reallocate resources, and to just make universities as corporate as possible. And I think that's really unfortunate because a lot of people, this is their last chance before they enter the real capitalist world that they will have to live in a non-corporate structure. And I think it's really sad that we're trying to impose capitalism earlier and earlier and earlier in people's lives, instead of just letting them have a chance to be free, to not have to worry about their bills so much, to not have third places that you have to spend money in. Like a lot of bars in Toronto or a lot of cafes, they're money-based. So if you are a lower income person, it absolutely screws you over. And it means the only people who can successfully network are those who can spend money every single day of the week. That's a separate issue, but we'll get into all that and so much more in just a little bit. Stay tuned for that.
Tried to avoid. I fell into my lap from the tilt of the day, 'cause I was spending my time in those self-inflicted crimes. The shot glass in the stein, oh, I was on my way, following your limbo moves, that island very empty space. I must have been seeing something nobody else saw. You needed me as much as some blind man needs to touch. So let me be a crutch. Oh, I could show you the way. We both have our place. Thunder makes a noise, lightning's got that boy. Can't you see? Cause I've been part of so many storms. They washed away too much of my soul, leaving me so bare I could hardly explain. So babe, I won't pretend. And all this time I've spent, I can't remember when I felt a fresher breeze blowing through these trees. Thunder makes a noise, lightning's got that boy. Can't you see? Thunder makes a noise, lightning's got that boy. A sample case of you and me, definitely.
Welcome back. You're listening to Student Revolutions in History on CIUT 89.5 FM. We are still joined by Michael, fabulous co-worker and a very good friend of mine. And we're talking about third places, which we just touched on a little bit. We'll be talking about them more specifically in a university context and how important they are for students.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned kind of briefly before that music break there, just the issue of the way that it's been viewed as more of a corporate structure university rather than just like an educational thing. I know I think this is fine to say, I think the minutes are public. A former student representative on Vic's Board of Regents said at a VSAC meeting, which is the Vic student government, that kind of roughly paraphrased or quoted a member of the Board of Regents who stated, Victoria University is primarily a real estate management corporation that side deals in education, which is kind of like, I'm sure that wasn't the exact words that the person said. This is all like paraphrased, but is I would say a dangerous philosophy to use with like a university, which I think is supposed to be primarily for the life and the well-being of students and the advancements of students and the sharing of knowledge. But you look at institutions like Vic or U of T that own, I use own in paraphrasing quotes, with the issue of like land ownership. And
Oh no, they own it.
well, I mean, like in terms of owning unceded land and territory.
Understood.
Within the kind of like Canadian state imposed legal system. But that's a fun sociolegal studies topic. But anyways, like they own the land and they view that as just like, how do we get the most money out of this possible? You see at Vic, there was like so much land that was used for like housing and for student hubs and for student offices, which has now been rented out to like McKinsey or to like various condos. That way Vic can get as much money as humanly possible. Or like that little section of Bloor Street where they just rent out to retail spaces.
Meek Mile, I believe it's said. I can't actually remember what the real name of it is, but it's full of jewelry shops, it's full of high-end retailers, and Victoria University did not pay tax on it for many, many years. So if you're listening to this, you're paying tax while our universities are fleecing us for tuition while refusing to pay their own tax because of the educational status of the land that Sephora and TD Bank are sitting on while they do business and pay rent to Victoria University.
You even see issues like within Victoria University, there was this thing called Stevenson House, where there was land promised to Victoria University from a former professor, Dr. Stevenson, whose promise mandated that the land was used for student co-op housing. That was shut down by the university fairly recently, like within less than 2 decades. I would say like I think it was like 2010-ish was when it was officially killed. But it was moved around a lot because Vic initially it was at one location. Vic wanted to use that land for something else, and they moved to a different location, and then a different one, and then eventually they added a section onto one of the residences that's called like the RJ Mansion, and that was used as like Stevenson House for a bit. But then Vic was like, hey, we could get more money out of this if we charged normal rates for residences, and so they killed it. But the official reason they used was like they don't like how co-op housing because it's not as clean and mandated, but also it's students living together and they are okay with whatever level of care that they want to give to the space. But that's just like all the spaces are being used and valued as a financial commodity and not just as a location for humans to exist.
Yeah, and that is something really important because we live in Toronto, Canada. We cannot get away from it. The housing crisis is everywhere. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the university is one of, if not the biggest landlords in this entire city. Their Four Corners plan has put billions upon billions upon billions of dollars into investing in new buildings, which they can then rent out to other companies to make themselves more financially sovereign from the province.
Which I guess traces back to the issue of the Ontario government not giving enough money to universities as a whole and not properly funding education to the extent it needs to be. To the fact that teachers in like high schools are massively underpaid and not properly given protections that they need. And then universities don't get enough money, so they end up relying on their spaces that they trade away from students for funds.
Yeah, and unfortunately, instead of, organizing to stop this kind of underfunding by the Ontario government, the university has instead decided to privatize the ever-loving out of every single thing in there. In case you're wondering, we as Victoria College students are not represented by a student union. We used to be, now we are represented by an administrative council, which is very kind of them. But this goes even deeper than that. And a lot of the preconceptions we have of places in a university, they have to make their money back, that kind of thing. Do they? Mm-hmm. Because the university owns it. They don't pay tax on the land. There's really no reason that any cafe, any bar has to make their money back. Because the university, this university specifically, is one of the wealthiest institutions in all of Canada. Their recent Defy Gravity fundraising campaign, which if you donate to the University of Toronto, stop it. They're using your money for bad things. Donate to some student organization instead. That $5,000 will change the life of some students and will mean all for the university. Because the University Defy Gravity campaign, which they launched just a couple years ago, has raised over $4 billion. Yeah, this is one of 2 campaigns they've done in the last decade that have raised over $3 billion. In case you're wondering what those billions are for, no, it's not to subsidize rent. No, it's not to make housing more affordable. No, it's not to make student mental health better. It's mostly to pay salaries for administrators who pass their work on to other administrators, and for construction projects which destroy the student quality of life on this campus, but are able to maybe in 50 years' time pay back the loans that the university took out. Because the university, in case you didn't know, is not allowed to sell any of their land. So they're supposed to not be allowed to sell any of their land. They do it anyway all the time. But because they cannot use any of their land as collateral due to the University of Toronto Act and the Ontario government, in order to pay for new construction, they take out debentures, which are a type of loan that banks give out to institutions, which have interest rates at like 10, 20%. Yeah, that also need to be paid back in full within the next 50 years. So the university will end up paying the loan plus interest, which ends up being 5 or 6 or 10 times the original price of the loan, just to build new spaces so that they can become financially solvent. Now, if you're wondering, the university is spending more money than a space could ever give them. How does that make any sense? Well, you see, by the time the university has to pay it back, the current president will have taken his nice lofty retirement fund, which is at $300,000 a year, and will off to somewhere else in the world and be paid wonderful, wonderful dollars to go speak and talk about how he transformed the university. Well, students in Toronto are literally living in tents, trying to get an education because we've convinced everyone that having a piece of paper that says bachelor's on it makes you inherently more valuable as a worker than anything else. And instead of trying to improve the quality of life, most university resources are allocated to actively trying to decrease student quality of life for increased profits, which is incredibly disgusting.
You also just see kind of administration trying to take on student life, whereas I feel the true value within student life comes from it being student run. That's where you get the honest experiences and the honest wants of students on what they want and what they need for their community and how to form community properly. You see things like in the Victoria College, the dean's office keeps expanding every year. We have a dean, we have an executive assistant to the dean, we have 2 associate deans, 3 assistant deans, a campus life coordinator, a residence life coordinator, a couple interns, a social media coordinator, career advisor, and I think a couple more people possibly, where you're just like that. Everyone in the office will be very nice and happy to you and smile, which is great. But the issue is a lot of that work, it kind of can be done by students or it can be done by fewer administrators, where you see kind of the administration, the proliferation of administration taking over those student spaces, which would otherwise be running a lot of that stuff anyways. You see a lot of mental health work coming from students who are advocating on behalf of other students or themselves, which is done through organizing, which they need space to do. For example, I'm also an executive at Voices, which is the Vic branch of the Pairs Project, and we would love to have a physical space on campus to host peer support. Only issue is there is no space for Voices to have currently in the student center on campus. So there's no way for us to host that peer support, but instead they have paid interns from Emmanuel College, I believe they're being paid, hopefully, to take over a student space so that they can host it there rather than have honest run peer support from those who are trained from trauma-informed perspectives.
Yeah, and it really is a problem because it really takes away the ability of students to actually change their own lives. And I think that's one of the best things about university is that a lot of the time it's a risk-free zone. You can try doing projects that might fail, but they have the chance to succeed, and the university should be empowering students so that they do succeed.
That's where you gain those skills. You learn how to run tech like this on the radio station. You learn how to plan events. You learn how to run peer supporting. You learn how to organize. You gain all these different skills that you'll take with you for the rest of your life, both within a career or outside of a career. But you need those opportunities, and you need spaces to conduct those opportunities from. And if those opportunities are taken in by a university or an administration, that you need to be hired by them within a specific job framework and needs to be a paid environment, you kind of lose a lot of those opportunities. I mean, pay students for their work. That is important. As one who volunteers many, many hours and gets very, very little honorary compensation for that. But that needs to be done through students as a student run thing rather than done as an administrative thing, which adds so many barriers and levels of hierarchy to it that you don't get the free space to explore.
Yeah, it really does. And that's kind of what it all comes back to, is that if somebody hires you and employs you, they are your boss, and they can decide whether or not you get to hang out in a space, what you get to do in that space, and they have your financial ability to live in the palm of their hand. And if we just got rid of all of the administrators who do essentially nothing except for email each other and go on vacation early and don't respond to your own emails. This is, in case you can't tell, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, of administrators saying, okay, let's do this then. And then I email them and I get the automatic, oh, we've gone for Christmas break. It's December 2nd. Don't go for Christmas break. We don't get Christmas break until the 23rd. You should be staying in the office until then. But unfortunately, a lot of this is caught up in that kind of, oh, we don't have money to pay students for their things. But we do have the money to hire as many administrators as we possibly can fit into a student center, which it's a student center. It shouldn't have any administrators in it. They have their own building. They have multiple buildings with offices in it. And we just see so much of this. The student commuter centers are all run by the university and not by students, which means that they, A, have hours, and B, are fully closed on weekend. As someone who recently tried to find a place to study on the weekend that wasn't a library, every single student space, except for CIUT, was closed on that weekend. Harthouse is supposed to be a student-run space. That was a part of its original contract with the University of Toronto. It has become its own corporation and exists mainly in order to fund itself, which is kind of disgusting considering that the only reason it was built by the Massey family was to have a student space that wasn't academic, which is something we really wouldn't see now because all the student commuter centers, even the student commons, they are all run either directly by administrators or a board of directors whom the university can appoint as many members as they want to, given our student union, who does not actually run their own building, which is kind of ridiculous. And because they have been so segregated to one part of campus and they don't actually have the ability to even run their own events, they have to charge other student groups exorbitant fees to be able to use their rooms, to pay back the university for something that they didn't want in the first place. It's a lot, and we're talking about a lot today, folks. If none of this is sounding familiar to you, if you went to college and you're saying, I don't remember any of this, A, we might not have gone to the same university. This is a very specific situation, but I think it's emblematic, and I think we can see a lot of these themes around the world, unfortunately. And B, this is something that has been incredibly recent. Even going back to the early 2000s, there was so many more student spaces run for students by students. They would get paid, they had less rules around them, which I'm not necessarily saying are a bad thing, but given that students get no input when paid salaried employees make the rules, because the university pays their bills and they are not responsible to students in any way, shape, or form. When that happens, it just takes so much power away from students. It limits our ability for expression. It limits our ability to design new things. It limits every single thing, including our capacity to learn. And it's just really unfortunate because that's really what universities are all about. It should be a place from which young adults, or any adults, because it shouldn't be age segregated, can learn about themselves, their world, and how to live within it. And unfortunately, we've seen a transition from that to this corporate hellscape where every single thing you pay for at a university is above market rate somehow, and every single thing you want needs to go through 15 levels of governance before someone can say, oh yeah, that's probably fine. It's ridiculous. This is a long rant, but it is something that affects a lot of us. And it's something that is incredibly, incredibly important for every single student, regardless of whether you've thought about it. It is something that impacts you on a daily basis. If you live on res and you pay ridiculous fees, over $2,000 a month for a single bedroom, which is not a studio because you share a kitchen a lot of the time. It's significantly worse than a studio. You pay over $2,000 a month, which is above market rate, for no reason because the university owns that building. It legally cannot be taken away from them. They could charge whatever rate they want, and the actual rate to, maintain the buildings, keep them lead and asbestos free, which they're not. They're full of lead and asbestos all the time, including our Arts and Science Center. The Sid Smith building is chock full of asbestos. Also our medical science building, which has a lung cancer research lab, which I guess is just the student lounge. But it is absolutely ridiculous that the university is willing to pay $1 billion for a new student AI. No, it's not even a student. It's an AI research center, and isn't willing to get rid of the asbestos that we breathe in daily at the Sid Smith Commons is insane, and it's disgusting.
The research is what gets them the publicity. It's the research that gets them up on the list of like top universities in the country, which brings in the international students and the international student money because they can charge them huge rates.
It's blatant extortion. That's what it is. And everyone knows it. And for some reason, we've all become okay with it.
I think it's just kind of a lot of students, when they hear this stuff, they're just kind of like accepting of it, not in the way that they want to be, but just, especially at U of T, they wear you down academically. So a lot of students don't have the time or the energy or the capacity to properly devote towards organizing for this. Which kind of plays into, if you don't have space to organize, you don't have free time to organize, you don't have a existence beyond work and home, then you don't have a chance to kind of notice these issues, come together on these issues, and identify commonalities that you can deal with.
And that's really why third places are so important, because it does give us a break. If you've ever thought, is this all there is to life? Is it just working and then going back home and cleaning up and then repeating it day after day? No, it doesn't have to be. That's just the way our current society has prioritized and forced you into. And that's really sad, because all of us, I think, deserve a better life than that. Even the Dean of Vic deserves a better life than just working and playing. She gets it because she gets paid, so she can do whatever she wants with that money. But the rest of us are paying to essentially be exploited by this institution. And unfortunately, the vast majority of university students are young people. They don't know what it was like 20 years ago at this university. Most of the people in this university don't know we have a radio station. Most don't know we have some of the student centers we have, because they aren't published. It costs money to advertise things, and the university would so much rather advertise how one guy invented insulin 100 years ago than, show students how they can be supported by their peers so they don't kill themselves. And that's insane, it's ridiculous, and it's disgusting. This is a heavy episode. It doesn't have to be, but it is something, because we are young people. This impacts so many people across Canada and around the world on a daily basis. And it does have really severe consequences for your mental health and your physical health too. So I would like to thank everyone for staying with us. It's a lot to think about on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. But we hope you're having a good commute. I hope this doesn't make you as sad as much as it makes you angry, because it doesn't even matter if you're not in university, if you're not planning to go to university. You might have kids, your friends might have kids, you might know young people. They will be in university at some point, because the vast majority of Canadians do end up in university at some point in their life. And they will face these problems, and they will have these challenges. And if we just let things happen the way they've been going for the last 50 years, it's going to end up absolutely horrible, to the point where I don't think anyone will be able to get more out of university than they sacrifice by going into it. Again, I want to thank you for listening. This is a lot for 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. But we do talk about happier things sometimes, and we talk about things that can make you angry, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I think having a life ruled by anger isn't a good thing, but having a life where things that are unjust make you angry is good, because we should be mad at injustices. So if you want to help make student spaces in third places, just set up. Just pick a spot on campus. Just tape the locks. This is not a legal endorsement. I have to say that legally, but I do actually, and in a much more real sense, I do endorse this, of just take back the space that is yours, because you are paying for this space. It is supposed to be yours. And the fact that some administrators who get paid $100,000 a year and get free residence to do all the entire time they work here is stopping you from doing it is ridiculous.
There's so many spaces that could exist for students, but a lot of the information, like you kind of mentioned, just is gone from like what was 20 years ago. And administrators kind of know that. The administrators will be here for decades, and like that's how they viewed like their span of their careers. But students are here usually on average 4 to 5 years. And And so that's a very quick turnaround. By the time you really get your footing on what the layout is of like, where are these spaces? What are the issues? How can I deal with them? You're out the door. And so you have a very brief window of where you hold the knowledge and where you can pass that on to other students. I was very, very lucky last year to get to know some people who have this extensive bit of knowledge and try to gain as much as I can, just like chat some like great friends of mine. But a lot of that just disappears when you graduate. I think a lot of that disappeared with COVID when everything locked down and went online. That whole like pre-COVID wave, especially the like organizing wave that came up from the mental health crisis in 2019, I think that they were able to get like a good batch of like the first years in that year who have now, a lot of them have just graduated. And you see that very quickly reflected in how the student governments were operating, how last year even they were a lot more politically active and a lot more challenging of administration because they the upper years there were raised and taught by those who had come up during the 2019 crisis and had that knowledge, that institutional knowledge to pass on. But now you see people who are filling these ranks don't have that experience, don't have that knowledge, aren't kind of like politically active in that way because they haven't dealt with that specific acute crisis. They've just dealt with a more prolonged one that is a continuous issue at U of T, which feels harder to tackle than the rather immediate one that occurred then. But all that information about where those spaces are, how they operated. I noticed even last year I was a VP at a student government where I dealt with a lot of student organizations who, for example, would want like keys for their executives all to get access to a student office. And then I would talk to administrators and be like, hey, the student group wants their keys for their execs. They said they all got that pre-COVID. And the administrators would be like, no, that wasn't a thing. And I'd be like, it was. I have like tangible proof that this was a thing. And then they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, sure it was. Because there was that big gap where everything wasn't in person, they're able to kind of rewrite the rules on what spaces are designated for students. What spaces can we use? How can we use them? Where that wasn't how it's been for years. That wasn't what the spaces were created for. And so that leaves open opportunities for administration to kind of take that over if they want to run student life through themselves, which it's not really student life if it's administrator run, I would say.
And they're so bad at it. All of the student spaces that administrators run are just terrible because they aren't students.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they were students at some point because they aren't students anymore and they don't face the same challenges. And I think that's an incredibly important point to bring up, is just that we do leave. This isn't a community. This isn't like a neighborhood where people will stay here. They will have that history in them and they will be able to share it with others. It's something that happens every single year. Like a fourth of the population of this university just leaves. Yeah. And the only people who have the institutional knowledge are the people actively trying to make our lives worse.
I don't want to say they're actively trying to make our lives worse.
I am trying to make my life worse specifically. It doesn't matter if she's trying not to. She's doing an incredible job, actually. If she's trying to make it better, then she's getting an FF minus, because holy mother of God.
I think I'm a bit of an optimist. I like to think people are trying to help in their own way. I just often disagree with their methods and what they're doing to try to
and their
help.
goals and
their goals and everything that happens and the things they say and the things they do. But
see, I can edit this one a little bit, so I'm getting angrier than I usually would on the radio. That's not everyone who's listening. That's not true. I get usually incredibly angry to the point of yelling. Inside the studio every Monday morning, which is a very interesting way to start your Monday mornings, actually. It's quite nice, actually. It's a little bit of therapy. Yeah, it's quite cathartic to just yell about my problems.
I just go on rants and like the little cat's eye.
What do you think the radio is?
I know, but I can't do my rants publicly.
Yes, you can.
No.
Yes, you can publish them and then throw a brick through a window. This is a good point for all the students listening.
If you want to read the strand.
Vandalism is an incredible incentive for universities to stop being bad at their job.
You need to edit that out.
I'm not going to. I'm just saying that if the university needs a balance of incentives and unincentives to make a choice, and one of the unincentives is destroying their property, and you do that enough, it will eventually push the scale to the point where they will make the correct choice.
I like to think there are other great means of advocating, but because
I think there is too, but I think they do understand the language of violence amazingly. Like with Occupy Vic, why isn't that happening every single week?
Because that took I know that took a horrendous amount of organizing work from Climate Justice U of D, who did a phenomenal job. Everyone involved in that, they did great.
such a good job, but it shouldn't take that much organizing work.
No, and I think you need to get people to be that committed to something. They need to feel there's an immediate like cause and effect thing. With Divest Vic and the occupying of Old Vic, that was a very specific, we want divestment now, we think we can get it immediately at this Board of Regents meeting, which they're able to do, which that was kind of, it was partially in progress ahead of time, but I think the occupation really helped tip things over the scale, and also was very important in the sense of assuring that the history of divestment at Vic is student-centered, because administration was very quick to release their statement where they only students that they explicitly praised were those who were Board of Regents representatives, which is, I think it's 5 or 6 members.
Also, the fact that it's called the Board of Regents is the most bullshit elitist thing I have ever heard. That's a side tangent, but please continue.
And so, like, I recently just wrote final research paper for an environmental justice class on divestment and how that kind of happened. But specifically, when you read U of T's news articles on when they did divestment in 2021, or their press statements from like Merrick Gertler, or the press releases from Vic, they are very quick to frame it as like the university being proactive rather than reactive. And so the occupation assured that like whenever people talk about Divest Vic, it has to be in relation to the occupation. The act of holding space in a more like radical sense creates history and does have like a massive effect on things. You see that within the history of social movements for a variety of spaces. Just being in spaces and holding that space is very important.
Yeah, just destroying the idea that some people can own a space and other people get to use that space. They are allowed to use that space.
It's a privilege.
Yes, it is something that we grant to you students who pay your entire life savings to attend here. We allow you to use your student spaces from 10 to 4 p.m. and then you can go home to your nice little dorm, which is full of asbestos and lead, and you can eat your shitty little meal halls. No, you want to spend your dollars at a different cafe on campus? Go f*** yourself. Also, this is a side note, but this is incredibly important, and it's something I forgot to mention. Third spaces on campus. Second cup does not count because this university, someone got paid by a Second Cup CEO because there's 13 Second Cups on our campus.
Oh, wow.
There is 13. There's 2 Starbucks and 1 Tim's. There is 13 Second Cups. I don't know what weird mafia shenanigans happened there, but the fact that a corporate entity, which like also their coffee is so bad. It's so bad. It's the fact that they were able to steal so much of the space that should be for students is ridiculous because all of the money you're giving to Second Cup, you could just pay students and they would make coffee and they would bring their friends and you could use your meal plan dollars for it because that's something they also worked out with Second Cup.
Go to student-run cafes.
Thank you.
Caffeines at Vic and Diablo's is the one at UC?
Yes, they have not opened because the administrators have not organized it yet. Thank you so much.
That's so fun.
The UCLIT.
Caffeines is open though.
I mean the UC Lit.
We love the UC Lit.
It's literally our 2 student representatives for UC students are UCLIT and ASU. It's ridiculous. But that is a really important part of this idea of privatizing student spaces of like, oh no, we don't want student run cafes. We'll just put a Starbucks here and Starbucks can hire their own employees.
Yeah.
There is literally 60,000 people, all of whom are begging for jobs and begging for university money, who would love to work as baristas, as whoever, as dishwashers. And instead, we're just throwing that money out to pay the dividends of people who hold Starbucks stock. And it's ridiculous. I hate Starbucks so much. Their coffee is so bad.
There are many reasons to be critical of Starbucks right now.
No, mostly the coffee one.
I'm not a big coffee person.
Good for you.
When I go to caffeines, my shift drink is usually hot chocolate.
That's fair. I hate all of the cafes on campus so much. They are all so bad. And you know what? I think food trucks are great. They're all independent. Good for them. Giving university space inside buildings is a whole different ballgame than actually just letting food trucks exist. Like that is very much like a market demand. People want food trucks show up, that kind of thing. But if you sign a contract for a 99-year lease with Second Cup and it's like, yeah, stay here forever, serve your coffee at ridiculous prices.
Which, why 99-year leases? I hate that. Please don't do those long leases.
Oh, so when the British invaded the Qing dynasty during the first Opium War, they were like, oh, we would love a 99-year lease of Hong Kong.
Oh, true.
It used to be a way of saying, F you, I'm taking this forever, until power imbalances become as such. So if you're a student, don't stop at the second cup. Don't stop at a Starbucks. Throw things at them, not at the employees, but at the buildings.
Or just make sure to support student-run spaces. The student-run cafes, the student-run lounges, student-run pubs are really great. I know the Cat's Eye is trying to kind of reaffirm our status as a pub as well, because that's been an issue for many, many years. We ran our first pub night this September since, I want to say, 2017.
Even though it is literally a part of the Cat's Eye. It was opened as a student pub, and the university has tried to take that away because they don't want other people serving alcohol, because then where would all their profits go?
The alcohol run through, when we ran our pub night, we had to run it through Vic Events, and the prices for the Vic Events alcohol are so high. That's like not really sustainable for students. We couldn't run multiple pub nights. It cost the Cat's Eye, I want to say like $1,500 to run a single pub night, which is because they mandate a certain number of security guards, which it's make sure everyone's safe. That's really fine. But also,
if only there was a group of students who were trained for, I don't know, some kind of nursing degree,
food and alcohol
safety, some kind of pairs project. No, I can't think of anyone who could fit. We should pay the security guards to sit there and play two dots on their phone.
The security guard, those at Vic, are very nice. I love them so much. They're so kind.
This is not something against any individual person. I think this is incredible. I'm going to keep this in the episode because this is a very important thing to say, is that this is not anything against any specific person at any of these institutions.
It's the idea,
This is the idea and the structures that you are a part of. I do not hate any person that is a part of Victoria University. I hate the actions they take, and I hate the way that they destroy student life through their job. I don't know them as people. I only interact with them through emails or through like chit chats. I'm not going to make a moral judgment on them. I'm saying they are incompetent. If you do know them, you're welcome to make moral judgments on them. I would also like to thank our producer, Alice, for being so wonderful and not screaming every single time I say something that
is going to get cut.
Well, we'll see. Yes. It might get cut. Who knows? I'm in charge of editing. Oh, okay. That's pretty much. What, you think I'm going to cut things from this episode? That's really funny, Alice. I actually do quite like this format.
This is nice.
It is so lonely at 9 a.m. on Monday mornings, which
I would come if it wasn't 9 a.m. on Monday mornings.
That's what all my guests say.
I would come to every single episode. This is fun. 9 a.m.
I want to thank everyone so much for listening. I've been your host, Riley Moorman. You've been listening to CIUT, Student Revolutions in History. Thanks so much. And I want to thank our guest, Michael, because he's been absolutely wonderful to have.
Thank you. Absolutely anytime. Thank you so much for listening. Please support Student Spaces, Third Places.
A holly oak tree is shading me, planted by a passerby, tossing acorn seeds till one takes hold and grows to be a shade of love inside a memory of you and me and that holly oak tree. Love inside a memory of you and me and that holly oak tree. I will be home soon enough. Nature will make sure of that. Even if I forget about her love song,
de tradiciones. Cuando contempla sus verdes llanos, lágrimas vierte por sus pasiones. Sí, lleva en su alma la magia mensa, tristes recuerdos de tradiciones. Cuando contempla sus verdes llanos, lágrimas vierte por sus pasiones. Sí, ella es sencilla, le brinda al hombre, virtudes todas, y el corazón, pero si siente de la patria el grito, pero si siente de la patria el grito, todo lo deja, todo lo quema. Ese es su lema, su religión. Ese es su lema, su religión. Su religión.
Kuta Miluki, love me.
Kuta Miluki, love me.
Tak sotaque, taxi.
Tak sotaque, taxi.
Oh, tiki boutique, tiki gamu.
Tiki boutique, tiki gamu.
Oh, toxi rock me.
Toxi rock me.
La 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 la.
La 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 la.
Oh, le 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 le.
Le 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 le.
Bob Dica, diga, Jimmy Renda assim. Cai cigano, cai canambó. Já rangiu Century Fox, Calvin Mia, Cigarettes, Billy Haley, Rolleiflex, Johnny Shop. Yeah. Bob Dica, diga, Jimmy Renda assim. Cai cigano, cai canambó. Já rangiu Century Fox, Calvin Mia, Cigarettes, Billy Haley, Rolleiflex, Johnny Shop. Johnny Shop. Oh, Johnny Shop. Oh, Johnny Shop. Yeah. Oh, Kuta Miluki, love me.
Kuta Miluki, love me.
Taque, sotaque, destaque, taxi.
Tak sotaque, taxi.
Oh, tiki boutique, tiki gamu.
Tiki boutique, tiki gamu.
Oh, toque, si rock me.
Toxi rock me.
La 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 la.
La 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 la.
Le 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 le. Bob Dica, diga, Jimmy Renda assim. Cai cigano, cai camonigó. Já rangiu Century Fox, Calvin Mia, Cigarettes, Billy Haley, Rolleiflex, Shop. Yeah. Bob Dica, diga, Jimmy Renda assim. cai cigano, cai camonibó. Já rangiu, Century Fox, Calvin e a Cigarettes, Billy Haley, Hollyflex, Jenny Chup 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 Chup. Ô Jenny Chup 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 Chup. Ô Jenny Chup 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 Chup. Ô Jenny Chup 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 Chup. Iele, 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 iele. Cuida me look, love me.
Cuida me look, love me.
Tac, tac, sotaque, destaque, tac,
Tac, sotaque, destaque, taxi.
oh, tique, boutique, tique, tigamo.
Tique, boutique, tique, tigamo.
Si rock, rock me.
Se rock, rock.